Well, hello everyone. Thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Scott Kaiser, and I'm a program specialist with Twin Rivers Unified School District, and I work with student services. We have a lot of work focused on preventing, intervention, and cessation of tobacco, alcohol, and drugs with our youth in the school district. And today we're very excited to have this presentation in collaboration with Health Education Council. Focusing on tobacco, vaping, and other drugs prevention. This is part of the workshop series that you guys have signed up for, so thank you so much for being here. So the way we are able to provide this presentation is through tobacco funding. So our grant that we have is called the Tobacco Use Prevention Education, and the mission is the Tobacco Use Prevention Education grant is state funded through Prop 56 and 99, and it allocates money or funds to school districts to provide education, mitigation, and prevention for youth tobacco use and potential pathways to other harmful substances such as alcohol, tobacco, or alcohol and other drugs and prescription medication. We to reinforce what we are presenting to you guys as parents and as partners in the district. We have a number of programs within the district that are going on currently to help out with mitigating, drug use, tobacco use, alcohol use in the district. We have a prevention curriculum that is geared at the 6th grade level. It's called Catch My Breath, which is really focused strictly on vaping prevention. We have Project Alert, which is a middle school curriculum for 7th and 8th graders, which goes over everything, all alcohol, tobacco, drugs, medication, prescription medication. We have Stanford Tobacco Prevention Toolkit at the 9th grade level that's way more in depth, that really targets 9th through 12th grade students in health. We have youth development programs where students are working together to reach out to their peers with awareness about alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. We have mentoring programs for those students that are in need, that are more at risk or have a tougher situation or living situation to where their exposure is higher in alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. We have intervention resources where we provide one-on-one or in group intervention for students who may have an infraction in school if they were to have alcohol, tobacco, and drugs on them, or if they are under the influence of that. We have cessation programs for students if they go through the intervention program and they would like to quit. We can provide them resources with California Smokers Helpline to have them quit smoking. And lastly, we have these family and community engagement workshops. So we're very excited to work with you guys, because as we know, it takes a community to really raise a family. We're here to support your youth day in and day out as well. And with a full circle wraparound with parents, you guys know your children the best, and we're helping to reach out to parents to help identify ways to discuss this with youth, and also to identify if youth are using and what to look out for. There's a lot of new things that youth are doing, and we want to talk to that. And I will hand it over to my partner in crime, Jeremy Combs.
Thank you, Scott. I'm really excited to be here today. It's great to see such a great turnout for this workshop series. As Scott mentioned, we are working with the TUPE grant, so Tobacco Use Prevention Education. I am also a program specialist with student services. So before we get started, I just wanted to kind of give you guys an overview of how the workshop series was going to work, and just how the logistics of the day is going to work. So as we mentioned, there are 4 workshops. The first one obviously being today, so thank you for being here. There will be a series of workshops happening every Thursday, March 11th, 18th, and 25th, from 3 to 4 as well. So obviously, if you're here and you have the link, it will be the same link every week. Edalberto did say that we would be able to provide reminders. So just if you already have it on your calendars saved, that's great. But we'll try to send out reminders to families, just reminding them about upcoming trainings that will be happening. So next week we'll be going into the conversation. So, and then week 3, advocating for healthier environments. And then finally, week 4, discussion, and support roundtables. So a few parents did have some questions that they brought upon registration. And to honor that time, we're going to provide the information. We wanted to try to focus that roundtable in week 4, really go over those types of questions and other questions that may arise throughout this workshop series. So just know if you had questions that you put out there in registration, we are looking at that information and looking to provide resources as needed. With that being said, you also may have noticed that we do have raffle prizes that we'll be raffling off at the end of each session. So we have 5 Starbucks gift cards, each in value of $25, that we'll be raffling off at the end of this session today. So in order to qualify, you will have to stay for the entire session. And then what we're going to do is basically look at the order of who's here, assign them a number, and then we're going to have a number randomizer select 5 numbers. And just so you know, we're being fair, no district staff or health education council staff will be eligible for those. So it only goes to those families that are here today and attending. So we just want to, reward you because we know your time is so valuable and there's a lot going on. So for you to be here really shows that, the care and support that you have for your students. And we're just excited to share this information with you. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today from Health Education Council. So Ariana Ponce, you now have the floor.
Thank you. And then can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ariana Ponce. I'm the program coordinator for Lucha Tabaco at the Health Education Council, and I will be giving a portion of today's workshop on the history, impact, and prevention of tobacco use. Next slide. And so just as a little background information, HEC stands for Health Education Council. So we're a nonprofit located in West Sacramento, and we seek to cultivate health and well-being in communities through the process of collaboration. So we do this by working closely with community and other organizations. And for Lucha Tabaco specifically, it stands for Latinos Unidos contra el Hábito y Adicción al Tabaco, otherwise known as Latinos United Against the Habit and Addiction to Tobacco. And so this program is just one of the many programs at the Health Education Council. And so it is tobacco tax funded and seeks to reduce health disparities related to tobacco, specifically among the Latino communities in the Gold Country region or Northern California. And so now to go over a little bit about the history of advertising to minorities and youth specifically. Advertisements have been used in the past to target their audience by including people in their advertisements that their audience can identify with. So big tobacco companies would include people of color and youth as seen in that first picture. So for youth specifically, these ads were often placed at eye level. So at registers at eye level below that. And then for minorities as well, studies have shown that there are more of these advertisements in Black and Brown communities. And so for flavors, which is one of the ones that we've seen most recently, we know that flavors attract kids, especially when they resemble candy or fruit. So for tobacco companies, hooking youth onto their products when they are so young is beneficial to them because there is a potential that those young individuals become addicted and become consumers of the tobacco company for the rest of their lives. And so advertising is directly aimed at youth for flavored tobacco products. And it has introduced a new generation to the tobacco industry by making them especially vulnerable to trying out these products and becoming addicted themselves. And so the wide array of flavored tobacco products appeals to youth and leads them to be influenced to begin wanting to use these products. And then lastly, we have social media, which is what the tobacco industry is currently using. And so they use paid and unpaid ambassadors, or what they call influencers. And so in this day and age, it is common to see that companies have ambassadors or influencers endorse and promote their product to their following. And so in the case that we're seeing now, youth is their following. And so they may look up to these ambassadors or influencers. And if they see them promoting these tobacco products, it might lead them to consider trying them themselves as well. And then with social media, they also create a sense of lifestyle and a glamorous community. So this can be seen through their ads and hashtags like hashtag Vape Nation, hashtag You Decide. And so these tags have been used on millions of images and videos on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and the most recent social media platform, TikTok. And so it makes it easier for youth to be exposed to the tobacco industry, especially when these images and tags are not censored and don't contain any kinds of warnings that allows youth to know that tobacco products are addictive and they have chemicals and a lot of harmful things in them. And so that leads us to our first poll question. And so it is, how much does the tobacco industry spend on marketing their products? And this is per year. So our options are A, being 5 billion, B, 9.6 billion, and C, 5 million. And then the last one, D, being 9.6 million. So go ahead and choose the one that you think it is, and then we'll show the results. Okay, we're almost getting there. Okay, it looks like most people think it's 9.6 million, but it's actually 9.6 billion. So we know that the tobacco industry and big tobacco companies have a lot of money and they definitely know how to use it. And so they put all of that towards their marketing, and they market towards, again, minorities and youth. And so now we're going to look at the burden of tobacco. We're going to look at the burden of tobacco specifically in Latino communities, African American communities, and Asian American communities. So for the first one, Latino communities, the rates are a bit smaller than the national rate, but it's still concerning because they have these side effects of possible side effects of cancer and heart disease, which are two of the leading causes of death for Latinos. And so we know that big tobacco gave over $75,000 to the Hispanic American Chamber of Commerce, specifically for them to mail out all these letters urging businesses to protect tobacco tax increases. So again, they have a lot of money, they know how to use it, they know where to invest it in order to continue selling their products. And then at the top, we just have a few statistics of the prevalence of smoking within the Hispanic Latino community. And so moving on to the African American community, African Americans are more likely to be exposed to secondhand smoke than any other racial or ethnic group. That is very concerning. We know that they also have a little bit of higher prevalence use for these products. And the tobacco company has a long history of targeting African Americans with menthol cigarettes specifically, menthol being a flavor similar to mint. And so they advertise and promote these, making large financial contributions as well to African American groups and political leaders. Again, they know where to put their money to. And menthol flavor products have been found to be highly addictive to African Americans specifically, with over 80% use among African Americans. So again, this is a major risk factor for cancer, stroke, heart disease, and diabetes. And again, at the top, we have a few statistics on their use of tobacco products. And so now moving on to the Asian American community, tobacco companies have found promise in marketing to Asian Americans because of their high population growth, their high smoking rates in their countries of origin, and the increasing consumer power and a high brand loyalty to American product. And so again, tobacco is a major risk factor for cancer, stroke, heart disease, and lung cancer. We know that cancer and heart disease are one of the leading causes of death. So again, this is very concerning that they are directly targeting to these minorities. And so that leads us to our second poll question, which is, what are some health impacts related to tobacco use? And for this question, I believe you should be able to choose more than one answer. So our first one is diabetes, B is heart disease, C is a lung cancer, and D is sudden infant death syndrome, otherwise known as SIDS. Okay, we're almost getting there. And so this was actually a trick question. They are all right. Tobacco use can lead to all of these. SIDS was actually one that I didn't mention in the slides, but it can cause it. Of course, babies aren't going to be smoking, but they can be exposed to secondhand smoke, and exposure to secondhand smoke can lead to SIDS. All right, so now we're going to move over to a brief introduction to flavored tobacco and vaping. So we know that 80 to 85% of youth say that their first tobacco product was a flavored tobacco product. So these flavors can include anything like menthol, bubble gum, unicorn poop, all this kind of stuff, mostly sweets and fruit. And there are over 15,000 flavors. And so tobacco companies know that these flavored tobacco products attract young people. And so the intended obvious audience for flavors such as bubble gum are definitely not adults. And e-cigarettes are battery operated devices that work by heating up a liquid that you put into them in an aerosol that the user inhales and then exhales. And so e-cigarette liquid typically contains nicotine, and other chemicals and flavorings that are all additives. And so now we'll look at the evolution of tobacco smoking products. So just so that we are all familiar with what tobacco products look like, let's go over the different types. So the photo on the left is of traditional cigarettes, typically sold in a pack. In the photo that's in the middle, there are several electronic cigarettes of all sizes and colors. Typically, these e-cigarettes require a charger that is very similar in appearance to a cell phone charger. And then the photo on the right is of a class or a type of e-cigarette. These are typically disposable, relatively cheap, and they're smaller and also easier to hide. And they resemble a USB drive. And so smoking products continue to evolve. They seem to be becoming smaller and more disposable. And so the tobacco industry continues to make smaller and cheaper electronic cigarettes of all kinds of colors and flavors in order to attract young people. And so e-cigarettes are becoming more popular among youth. This has led to nearly 200,000 high school students currently using cigarettes and other tobacco products. And so that leads us to our poll question number 3. For the third question we have, how many tobacco products are in this picture? So there are tobacco products such as jewels and jewel pods scattered among the school supplies, and try to find them all. And so the options for this question will be 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and 15 plus. So try and see if you can find as many as you can. Okay, we're about halfway there. Yes, you can include the caps or the what you put back into the jewels. Okay, we're about 80% there. So we can go to the next slide so you guys can see what they are. So most of you guys were right. There's over 15. So in this picture specifically, there were 17. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So yeah, there were 17. And you can see it was, you know, a bit difficult to distinguish what was a highlighter, a pen, school supplies versus a jewel or a jewel pod. And so that's exactly how they can be hidden in plain sight. So hopefully now you guys have like a better idea of what to look for and what they look like. And so now I'm going to go over a comparison between conventional cigarettes and e-cigarettes, conventional cigarettes being those that you typically buy in a pack and e-cigarettes being the ones that we have been going over. So for conventional cigarettes, these are the ones that are burned with either a match or a lighter, whereas e-cigarettes are the ones that you have to put an actual e-juice in them, and then you have to heat it up using that battery-powered device. And so conventional cigarettes are regulated by the FDA, whereas e-cigarettes not so much, especially because they're so new. And what is regulated by the FDA is sometimes those juices, but they're regulated in terms of what they contain and just as liquids themselves, not necessarily what heating them up through an e-cigarette device causes. We know that it changes the composition of them and makes them more dangerous because at this point you're heating up chemicals and all the additives. And apart from that, conventional cigarette, we know how many chemicals and cancer-causing chemicals it produces, whereas e-cigarettes, not so much, just because of how new they are. But at the end of the day, smoke is smoke, and we shouldn't be inhaling or coming into contact with that. And so as far as quitting, a lot of people believe that e-cigarettes are relatively safer or will help you when it comes to quitting. But at the end of the day, they contain the same nicotine and tobacco, which are both highly addictive. So one is not to say like it's easier to quit e-cigarettes versus conventional cigarettes. And so to go over a little bit about prevention, education is really important. It's important to educate youth about tobacco and how it is highly addictive and difficult to quit. And so some youth may not even know what e-cigarettes contain, therefore being transparent with them about the added ingredients and chemicals is really important. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So here we'll have some resources. The first one is that teen.smokefree.gov. This one is really good for teens or youth who may want to learn more about e-cigarettes or smoking or vaping, the harms of it. And it's a website that is more digestible for youth. It'll have vocabulary that they're more familiar with. And the second one is Ditch Vape or texting Ditch Vape to 88709 in the case that they do smoke and they'd like to have more resources or help to quit smoking. And then the last thing we should do is offer more support. And so you can go ahead and join us for workshop number 2, which Joanna will be leading. And so you'll be able to learn how to have that conversation about tobacco with your youth, to kind of understand where they're coming from and what their knowledge may be about tobacco, and then also being able to have the tools and resources yourself to be able to educate them and inform them about tobacco and start that conversation. So that will be next week. And then that goes for our last poll question. So what topic would you like to learn more about? And so our options are marijuana, resources, prevention, e-cigarettes, and vaping. So there is no right answer. We just want to know what you would like to learn more about for the weeks to come and the workshops to come. And then you guys might be able to pick more than one answer. I'm not sure. Thank you, Leah. It looks like most of you want to learn more about prevention, so that's great because that's our next workshop for next week. The workshop for next week will also be going over more about e-cigarettes and vaping. So, okay, and so we can go on to the next slide. And so that concludes the portion on the history, impact, and prevention of tobacco use. And so feel free to take yourself off mute and ask any questions you may have, or go ahead and leave them in the chat box if you'd like more information on what we covered today. My email is aponce@healthedcouncil.org. I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat, or you can also contact Joanna. Her email is on the slide as well. She will be giving the workshop next week. And so I also went ahead and added the Health Education Council social media page in case you want to follow us and stay updated. Other than that, thank you so much for having me.
Question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I know you guys have this for us parents. What do you guys have for like the kids intervention or educational lessons on drugs and alcohol?
Thanks for that question. We went over that in the first couple slides, but just to reiterate, we have a prevention curriculum for 6th grade to reinforce all this work that we're doing with parents as well. For the youth side of things, we have Catch My Breath, which is strictly a vaping curriculum for 6th grade students that the teachers teach in the classroom. We have Project Alert, which is a 7th and 8th grade curriculum, and it's an overall drug prevention curriculum. So it goes over everything: alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, prescription medication. And then we have, lastly, Stanford Tobacco Prevention Toolkit, which really hones in on the upper echelon, upper grades, 9th through 12th, really focusing in on vaping and how it kind of connects with marijuana, because that's kind of when they're starting to get into marijuana as well. We have youth development programs. We have mentoring programs for youth that may need it, who may have a difficult upbringing or a more challenging upbringing. So we have mentors as youth that mentor other youth younger than them. We have peer-to-peer outreach programs where students bring awareness and also teach their peers through activities throughout the year surrounding alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. We do have youth intervention, which is one-on-one or in groups. Myself and Jeremy Combs also provide that intervention to youth if they have any use or if they have infractions in schools and the schools refer them to us. Counselors across the district also provide this intervention to youth. And we typically include parents during that intervention in the last session. It's typically 3 sessions. So if I was to meet with a student, we would meet 3 times and then include the parent in the last one to kind of go over everything that we talked about, resources that we can add in to support the youth. And then after that, if there's cessation needed, we refer them to a cessation program, which could be California Smokers Helpline, vaping and smoking helplines, or vaping helplines. And lastly, obviously, we work with parents on an individual basis or through parent workshops through partnership with Health Education Council. Thank you so much for that question. Did I answer that correctly? Or is that answer all of your question?
Well, yeah, you answered it really good. I was kind of more concerned. My daughter's in high school, so I was just kind of figuring out, I know everything's virtual, so I was kind of wondering like or if they have time where they do, drug and alcohol. I remember, I'm gonna age myself, back in the day, I remember like they used to have it, and we come in high school, and she's in 10th grade now, and 9th grade, she didn't get it 10th grade, and it's almost like, oh, well, I don't know if they do that anymore. So I was just kind of curious about that. And another thing is, it seems like a lot of it is targeting towards like tobacco use. And so I was just wondering if it's like a 360 kind of, I know you said the Project Alert, but I think that seemed like for middle school, and the Stanford Tobacco is more for like high school. So just kind of trying to wrap my head around, I guess, the services and what's offered.
Right, and we're looking to actually add in, because marijuana is becoming a huge trend as well. Vaping is an epidemic. It's determined an epidemic by CDC. So we definitely want to hit on this as far as, because that's what we're seeing a lot of the new trends is vaping, and students are not only vaping nicotine, but they're also getting into marijuana. So it's kind of like a gateway to both, right? It used to be cigarettes, now it's kind of moving towards vaping, and kids are kind of moving more away from cigarettes. And just like Ariana said, with vaping products, they're easier to conceal, they're harder for teachers to see. Students are doing that in class. So that's why students are going to that. And also, it's harder to smell. Like really, sometimes there's no smell involved. So it's highly sought out after by the youth, because it's harder to detect. So we obviously want to get that information out to you guys, but we also try and hit that with all the curriculum and all the youth engagement that we do within throughout our school district. We also want to include the Stanford Tobacco Marijuana Toolkit, which we will probably be doing next year, because students are kind of going towards marijuana at a younger age. We're seeing that too. So we want to get in front of that as well. And obviously, they legalize marijuana to be 21 and over. But since there's going to be a lot more accessibility in our state, especially. So we want to get in front of that too. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Scott and Jeremy, can you go some of the questions that were asked within the registration form as well for some of our families?
I believe
Sure, yes,
Jesus Maraciel has his hand up too first.
Yes, I asked him to unmute. If Jesus, if you'd like to ask that question, or if it's tough for you, you can put it in the chat box. Not sure if he's able to. But some of the questions that we were seeing in the registration, we were seeing, how do we start talking with youth? When's a good time? How do we do that? And really, to be honest, it's a perfect question, because that's what we're going to be talking about in the upcoming sessions. So, just a brief. I don't want to go into much detail because I don't want to steal the show for Health Education Council, because they did such great work. But really, if you wanted to do it now until the time we meet next week, if there's something that you guys wanted to talk with your youth about, first off, coming with an empathetic approach. You want to use empathy in anything. Students nowadays, youth right now, have it way tougher due to social media, due to many other stressors. So we as parents, I have children as well. We have to empathize and understand what our youth are challenged with, and coming with an empathetic and a loving approach. You don't want to say, oh, you are silly for doing X, Y, and Z. I can't understand why you're doing that. I think that it's important to understand what the youth are going through and how stressful youth are, or how stressed youth are right now, especially during a pandemic, right? They're lacking their social connections, their engagement with others, with school, and hopefully, obviously, we'll be going back to school soon. So hopefully that will help that out. But just kind of using that love and empathetic approach to it, and then talking to them in a calm manner is something that we should all do as parents if possible. Because at the moment we are yelling at them or combative, we're losing our youth. We're losing them listening. So that would be my main advice for parents. A few other questions were kind of what are we seeing in the district as far as youth use, and like I said before, we're seeing a lot more vaping, and that's why we really want to focus on vaping and tobacco right now, because that's what we're seeing a lot of. And then obviously that goes into marijuana, so it's kind of a connection. And so we're starting to see youth as low as 4th and 5th grade as possessing or using. And so that's a main concern. That's why we have adapted the curriculum at Catch My Breath in 6th grade. We want to get it out earlier to youth to inform them and make more healthier and informed decisions about these things. Another question was, how do we keep our youth away from other youth users, or even during the school day? If students have it, what should they do? And number one, walk away. They should have skills which we discuss in school, refusal skills, way to kind of get away from the situation. They can alert through an anonymous or not saying who they are. They can tell administrators or counselors, hey, I was offered X, Y, and Z. I don't want any part of this, but it's unsafe and it's unhealthy, so I don't want to be part of it. But these children or these students had this, and I didn't like that. So that we can have adults on campus support what's going on and mitigate everything that's going on. We're not going to see everything. We're not going to get everything, but we're going to try our best to in our schools. And like Ariana said, they're easy to conceal, so it's harder to detect. But we're trying our best to prevent that from these things coming on campus and keep a healthier campus. Yeah.
There's a question I was asked also, that how do families go about talking to their children about vaping and tobacco when they themselves are smokers? How do they go as far as work or having that kind of conversation with their children?
That's right. That was another question. Thanks for bringing that one up. I think that's the easiest one. I think in hindsight, yes, it's hard because you are their role model, your direct role model, but it is easier for you to explain to them what the harm and effects may be, So if you are experiencing, waking up with phlegm or coughing, or, even talking about how expensive it may be, or if you are hooked on it or addicted to it, you can explain addiction and how that is interfering with things that you want to do in life, or if you want to exercise and it's harder to exercise, kind of those things. I think that you would be actually the best ones to be able to talk to your children about that, because you have the most experience with it, and these are the reasons why you shouldn't do it or you should not do it. So I think that's how you discuss it, and we're finding that 12 to 14 is the age range when you start to use these types of things or start to experiment. So if you have those children or those ages inside your households, talking to them earlier, I think is even better. Informing them, and that's what we're trying to do in the school district. Inform them to make better decisions and healthier decisions, so that they don't become addicted. And it's easy to become addicted, and that's something you can also talk with your youth about. Thanks, Edberto.
And one of the other questions that was asked was as far as age requirements, isn't there age requirements when it comes to uh, having access to tobacco or vaping products?
Correct. All alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, they're all set at 21 right now. So you have to be 21 years of age to have access or to purchase that stuff. Now, obviously, that's going to allow more access for youth to have that, since these things are becoming legal, well, especially marijuana now. But alcohol has always been 21. Tobacco was 18, but now it's 21, and marijuana is also 21. So it is out and about more often. Sometimes people do bad things as far as selling to youth after they purchase. So that's one thing that we got to watch out for. It's called the black market, obviously. But knowing who the kid who your children's friends are and what they are doing, I think is very important as well. Just to and talk with them, And that's, I don't want to take too much of what we're going to talk about next week, but that's kind of the conversations that you would want to start. And Health Education Council is going to do a great job of talking about that next week. Anything else, Alberto, that I might have missed?
Here, let me translate the one that was sent here.
Okay.
So it says here, it is true that as far as having this kind of conversation is really complicated. I have 3 kids. One of them is 21, one of them 17, and a 10-year-old. Thank God, thank to God that at the moment they're not using drugs or vaping, because it's really important as far as being aware of your children and what they're doing. But I also see that when it comes to the consumption of marijuana, as far as people that are driving in the streets or in cars, something that's interesting, just seeing the easily access of when it comes to marijuana products.
Very true. And there's a lot of misconceptions that are out there, and that's why we're providing all this insight and information to our youth and throughout the schools in our district. Now that they feel that marijuana is legalized at 21, that marijuana is healthy, they see some, marijuana in given to, patients as far as health, to help out with pain. So a lot of youth say, oh, well, it's healthy then. It's healthy for you. But there's a lot of confusion and misconception about that. So that's where we try to talk to our youth about that. Some youth feel that they can buy it at 18. So they have misconceptions about that too. A lot of the youth that we talk to also, especially during intervention, if they can drive, they don't understand that they're not supposed to drive while under the influence of marijuana. So they can get a DUI or driving under the influence if they were under the influence of marijuana. So there's a lot of things that I think we wish that there was the education or funding for education of marijuana before they legalized it here in California. We obviously pumped information out to the youth ahead of that time, but still there's so much work that needs to be done around marijuana, and we feel that we're kind of behind the 8 ball on that. But we will still, obviously, each year we are getting a lot of information out about to our youth about that.
Just really quickly, this person saying that I heard about the recent death about a 17-year-old in Rockland for taking, in this case, consuming pills that they purchased online. It appeared that he was a good kid, and then just had something that just happened where he made a poor choice in life, and obviously it cost him his life.
Yeah, and very, very disheartening and very scary. I think if I can recall that one, that was fentanyl. And it was a pill that was laced with that. And it could be one pill, it could be deadly. And what people are doing is they're lacing things too, lacing pills, lacing drugs, even lacing vaping or tobacco with other things too. So we as parents have, and educators too, we have to be we have to have our eyes out on everything. There's so many ways with the internet that students can get something so easy. If we have older siblings, or if there's somebody that they're connected with that's 21 and over, that they purchase stuff online on Amazon or other, they can get it to their fingertips, within a day very easily without anyone knowing. So we have to be vigilant and really just try to know our children, know our youth,
One of the last questions, Mr. Kaiser, is as far as what is the difference between driving drunk and smoke, and driving while high, or having been smoked or having been high?
I mean, really, they're both illegal. Obviously, the influence of marijuana slows your motor skills down a lot to where it's very hard to focus, blurry eyes, red eyes. It can seem like you're under the influence of alcohol too. So they're both illegal. They're both, you can get a driving under the influence for both. And they have, ways to detect on both as far as their tests. They have breathalyzers for both, and they can detect if they're driving under the influence for either. So what I tell all my youth is that I work with is, obviously we're trying to get them away from doing it, and then we're trying to discredit all the misconceptions and all the lies that are out there, misinformation, to keep our youth safe.
Okay, so I think with that, based on time, I'm gonna just proceed on to this recording obviously we'll share with you all, that way you can share with your family and friends. And then we will go into the next portion, which is the raffle, seeing that it's already almost close to 4 o'clock. And I think I'll let Mr. Combs, right?
Yeah, I'll take it from here. Thank you, Roberto. So a lot of great questions. We really appreciate your feedback. And if you feel like maybe you have some more questions, I really feel like these topics over the next 3 weeks are going to address a lot of your questions. And really, week 4, just so you guys understand, is set up for that roundtable discussion. And just to be completely transparent, if there's questions you ask that we need to get back to you on, we'll make sure that we provide additional information after this as well. So nothing's out of bounds as far as that goes. And if we don't have the answers for you, or right here and there, we'll make sure to get back to you with resources that can help. But with that being said, without further ado, while we were finalizing questions, I went through and I went ahead and selected our 5 numbers based on order of attendance. So here's what we're going to need for our the raffle piece. I'm going to call the 5 names that were selected based on number in order. And then if those folks can stay on after I announce your names, what we're going to need is we're going to need to get just verify your information, because the Starbucks gift cards are actually going to be delivered electronically through your email. So we'll have to make sure we have the correct email address for you. And we also need to make sure that we have, a receipt once you receive it, that you can get back to us and let us know that you received it as well. So I'll go ahead and read the names off for the first raffle. Just know that we're going to be doing this every week. And I didn't mention that at the beginning, but week 4, we're going to have a grand prize gift basket that's sponsored through Health Education Council. And I don't know all the mystery prizes associated with that, but we're going to get back to you on all the details of what that gift basket entails. I'll go ahead and read the names. Just remember, please come back next week. You'll have a chance. We do only have 1 winner per participant, but the grand prize will be open, and by keep coming back, you'll actually increase your chances of winning the grand prize.